Hi, today in the ceramic studio we're going to talk about how to make construction slip. Now construction slip is different than just decorative slip. It's the glue, the adhesive that we're going to use when we try to join two pieces of clay together. So it's a very important component in the construction process in ceramics. So the first thing that you want to do is make sure that the clay, the construction slip that you're using, is the same clay that you're using to make whatever object you're trying to make. And you can just take little bits and pieces, take your moist clay and break it up into small bits. This is just kind of stuff that I was carving out of a piece, so these little trimmings kind of make great construction slip. And you need to find kind of a container that has a lid, because you don't want it to dry out, you want it to stay moist. This is the container I'm going to use today. I just don't recycle a lot of my plastic containers that I have good fitting lids for, and I always label them so I know what's inside. So if you take your little bits and add those, once clay dries out, gets to this really almost bone dry state, you could roll over it with a rolling pin and crush it down into small granules. The smaller the piece of clay, the faster it's going to break down when we add water to it. The bigger, thicker pieces, the longer it takes for the water to get kind of absorbed back into the clay, because we want it to get nice and soft. So we would kind of take little bits, we would add water to it. And not too much. You don't, a little bit. You just want it to get to the consistency of paste. If it gets too thin, you over add too much water, you can always just leave the lid off for a while and it'll thicken up to when the water evaporates. And after you add water, I like to use a fork, and that kind of helps really break up the clay. You could let this sit for a while in water with a lid on, and that'll soften the clay up, and then you give it a good kind of stir. Use a lot of elbow grease. I like forks because the tines kind of really break up the clay pretty quickly, and then after a while it's going to get to that nice kind of almost pudding-like consistency. I have an example here of slip that construction slip that I've already mixed up, and I'll give it kind of a stir. It might be lumpy and chunky at first, but the longer it stays with a good fitted lid on it and stays moist, you'll stir it up and it'll be super smooth. I always tell people, if you can take a tool and stand it up inside the slip, it's a good consistency. It has that kind of like almost batter-like consistency, or blizzard consistency. If you flip the container over, it shouldn't be a pourable liquid. It should be more like a paste. The more water there is in it, the more shrinkage it's going to go through, and you want your slip not to shrink too much when it comes to kind of the construction process. So keep your lid on, make sure you don't let it dry out. If it does start to thicken up, add a little bit more water, keep kind of stirring it. Replenish it with trimmings or little bits of clay that kind of get too dry. Just throw them into your construction slip container, and you'll keep kind of like that level up, because it's something you'll always need whenever you're kind of attaching clay to itself. All right, thanks for joining me today. Happy clay building!